So Adam already has made several music tracks for some games that have been created in this house, and today for the first time he's going to show some insights on how he's doing it. So yay.
Alright, what up? I'm Adam. I've been working on a game called Sorcery. Just before I say anything, I'll play a little bit of the combat so you can get an idea of what it's like. Alright, so this is Sorcery. Lately the guys have asked me to write some music for the combat, and in that area in particular, which is called Forest of the Giants. Now, they gave me 3 pieces of criteria that I had to follow. The first one, which was a direct quote from them, which it has to be a banger. That's from them. The other 2, there needs to be 2 levels of intensity, pre-combat and mid-combat. And the third one, which was mostly my choice, was to make it stylistically consistent with the exploration music, which you would be hearing prior to this music. And the main things that would include is really simple things like having it the same tempo, using the same or similar keys, using one of the melodies that are in there. But one of the more complicated ones that I came across, I'll talk about in a second, but first I will just give you guys a quick refresher of the exploration music, so you can relate it to the music to come. I won't play the whole thing, I'll just play the start and then the melody that comes back. Will be in the combat music as well. So that's the exploration music. I'll play now the music that will play once you enter the combat area but haven't initiated the combat. And I won't play the whole thing of this as well. I'll just play about half of it. To the mid-combat music. So once you aggro the enemies, this music will start. Okay, that's that. So, as I was saying before, I had an issue that I faced initially when I wanted to be stylistically the same between the exploration music, the pre-combat music, and the mid-combat music. The first couple were pretty easy to solve. You just keep the same tempo, use the same keys, and have a similar melody. That's fine. The issue that I came across is that in the mid-combat music, it's just much, much bigger. You can hear how much bigger it is in comparison to the pre-combat music. And when you want something to sound really big like that, you need to think about virtual space that you're creating within a piece of music. So talk a little bit about space. So when you make a piece of music, you have an assumed listening position, right? And where you place your instruments is dependent on the space that they sit in. So a really small group of instruments, like say a chamber ensemble, like a string quartet or something, sits it's perceived to be really close to the listener. One step beyond that, which is what the exploration music and the pre-combat music would be, is in something that's like a chamber orchestra, where you have all of the instruments in an orchestra, but there's not very many of them. And up from that is a full-size orchestra. So, and you can see that gradually the instruments, there's not only more of them, but they're further away from you as well. And this is really important when you're making music, because if there's all of these different instruments, they all need room. They all need room to mix in together. So the problem I had is that the pre-combat music was sitting in this chamber orchestra realm, and whatever I did with the mid-combat music, it was not big enough. It wasn't a banger if it was in that realm. So I somehow needed to have the mid-combat music in that full-sized orchestra region, but transition into the pre-combat music, which is in a different space, which sounds kind of strange. And one thing I did, well, the solution to it is I had a secret listening position that you don't even know about. Basically what I did is that there's basically a separate room that has all of the foresty sounding percussion, like all of the bongos and the shakers and everything. They are not a part of the same reverb. They're not a part of the same simulated room as all the rest of the instruments. And that's not changed when you transition from one track to the other. So there's a consistency that kind of hides the fact that the room is getting much bigger. And I can show you an example of this with this new program I'm learning, which is FMOD. And there's a bunch of lines, and each one of these lines represents a place where the music can transition.
Oh.
So at the top, the left side here is the pre-combat music. I've split it into 3 separate tracks. The intense kind of percussion, the melody, and just the rest of the instruments. And then on the right side is the intense side of things. So all of these green lines represent a place in the music where it can transition from here to the corresponding same bar. And all I've done here is I've just started it at bar 100. So all I needed to do was just add on the bar number to 100, and then it's the relating bar. So if I was to, and all I really need to do is change this state up here. If I drag it from pre-combat to mid-combat, that's telling the program to change it from those 2 states. So I can start the track. Nothing's going to happen until I transition here. And then if I drag it back, it goes back. And alright, yeah, so that's basically how that works. So my hope is that it's really, really simple for the other guys to just plug in, whether it's pre or mid-combat, and it changes. So that's basically a breakdown of what's happening. I can go into each of these transitions and show you how it's working. So basically, if I double click on one of these transitions, where did it go? Here. This is what it's happening. It's taking the right side is where it's going, the left side is where it's come from, and you can just tell it which sources are fading in and fading out, and plus use other sources to supplement that as well. So you can see here, these are all different stingers. So these are individual pieces of, well, I'll show you these two here by themselves sound like. So little stingers like that, and all of these ones are slightly different to help the transition sound a little bit smoother. And that's my adventure with FMOD and adaptive music. Any questions?
How long did it take you to set this all up after the music was composed?
This took about 4 days of work-ish, because a lot of that was just figuring out how to work the program. But once I got the basics down, it was not too difficult. Oh, Joey?
Did you also compose the exploration music?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So it was, okay.
Hmm.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yeah.
Did you, was that in the plan to try to, when you made the exploration music, to keep it consistent with the battle music?
Yeah, so that was,
Okay.
they wanted it to be similar, but I wanted it to be really similar, so that the transition is really smooth. We'll go. Oh, yeah.
Did you sign autographs?
Yes.
Did you like first compose the whole music with all like 2-3 minutes that you played before, and then you went into the FMOD to do the transitions, or was it kind of like back and forth?
Yeah, that's right. I did the whole thing previous to starting FMOD, so both the pre and the mid were done. It was just, I used basically the same session and just added onto it so that it was the same length and everything like that. Yeah. Oh.
Is there like anything that you can copy paste from here, or is everything like handmade and like hand timed?
All of the green and white. So basically, the green lines are going from, and the white lines are landing. But besides that, yes. Sometimes, so in all, there's probably 80 or 70 or 80 different transitions, and there's I don't know how many different stingers. So a lot of them were reused. A lot of the stingers were reused. But in terms of this stuff, this was all done per transition.
Yeah.
So that's what took a majority of the time.
Jesus.
Oh yes, Macy, sorry.
Is this kind of transition dependent on them being so similar, or could you do something like this with if the tracks were slightly different? For instance, let's say there was about to be a combat transition and a biome transition at the same time, for instance.
That would have to be taken into consideration. The main thing is that there has to be similarities of tempo and key, and they all need to be thought about prior. It can't just be one to another thing completely, or else it will be too jarring. It needs to be relatively smooth. Yeah?
How does it feel to have created a banger?
Well, I did it. Good.
Have they listened to this already?
Yes, and they did say that it was a certifiable banger.
Certified banger.
Well, what is a banger?
That. Alright, was that any more?
Last one.
Yeah?
Do you have a SoundCloud that we can listen to more of your stuff?
I do, but it's not very often updated. I have Spotify and Apple Music and
Bandcamp.
And Bandcamp, yes. Yeah. It should come up if you Google me. Maybe. I don't know. If it doesn't, please tell me. I need to fix that. Alright.
Adam.com.
Yeah, boadam.com.
I'm his agent.
He's my agent and my #1 fan. Alright, thank you. Thank you guys.